Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Peer Perspective. Today, we're going to be speaking on vicarious trauma, both as Black people and as Black peers. It's 2021, and there's a lot going on in the world. Today's episode is going to be focused on how we as peers bear the burden of opening up about our own lived experiences and traumas, and how we run the risk of sometimes being re-triggered by supporting others and being able to open up about theirs. So, maybe we should just kick this episode off by talking about some of the experiences that we've had with this. So, for me, I guess since I'm already talking, I'll just go into it. I know that I've experienced vicarious trauma as a Black peer specialist in helping to support people with things that are outside of just our diagnosis. So in my program, I worked as a peer specialist with people who had schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or things along those lines. And while I couldn't necessarily always relate to the diagnosis part, I could relate to a lot of the trauma that people had in like their childhoods, whether it had to do with like childhood abuse or neglect from a parent or suicidal ideation. And I know that for me, talking about those things, even though I feel pretty much healed for most of it, still I ran the risk of like being just like saddened all over again, both by having this experience of like connecting with somebody through something so shitty, for lack of a better word, um, but also just having these thoughts running through my mind of like, yeah, I remember like when that happened to me. So I'm just gonna pass it off to you guys to kind of talk about how you guys have also experienced like vicarious trauma in your role as a Black peer specialist specifically.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Well, with me, you know, I think I experience that often because I'm in the same environment that I once was as a participant or a peer or whatnot. So now that I'm back in that same environment, certain things do trigger me or uh, bring up certain past events, especially when I'm dealing with somebody and they're going through the same exact thing that I've been through. Like, wow, I understand, and sometimes I tend to take that burden on and I have to pull myself back, like, this is not your battle. You're here to support or whatnot. So I understand that it can open up a can of worms unintentionally, that connection, rather you're connected to the peer per se or just that environment in general. Like when I go to the jails, there's certain things that bothers me that brings up uncomfortability, but then I think about the long run of it and whatnot, and I'm like, this is where I used to be, so it's not as bad as I'm feeling right now. They say every thought ain't the truth and every feeling ain't a fact, so I try to keep that at the forefront when I go into certain environments.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
saying. Sorry, Drew, I just wanted to say like that. I've never
yeah,
heard that, and I like that a lot.
that was cool. Yeah, that was cool. For me, vicarious trauma, I feel like when it happens, it's like you have to be strong for somebody else, and I think that's a really hard thing to do sometimes. But I think the best part of it is when you see somebody going through it the same way you went through it, or similarly, and you're able to say like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like, this is hard, yes, this is very difficult to deal with now. I may not be experiencing the same thing you are, but I've gone through something that kind of compares to it, and I can definitely help you try to get through this moment together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, and I think that that's a really like powerful thing to be able to do. Um, I remember very early on in my role as a peer specialist, somebody opening up to me about their hospitalization. And the hospitalization had happened like a while before he came to us. but he was hospitalized like on the holidays, and I had 2 holiday hospitalizations. So it was like, it was empowering to be able to talk about that with him in a way that didn't like overpower his story. I wasn't making it about me, but I was just connecting with him. Like, not only have I been hospitalized, but I've been hospitalized on the holidays. And we got to talk about like how shitty that felt and how we didn't want to go back to that ever again, or like experience that ever again. And then that led into a conversation of like, how do we cope, and like how do we make sure we're taking care of ourselves, and like make sure we keep that option like as a last resort. um and just being able to like share perspective but also get perspective back as a peer specialist, I think is really just like a special thing.
Yeah.
I think to piggyback on what Drew mentioned about encourage him that there's light at the end of the tunnel, you know, because once you talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, that feeling of that negative feeling that you had tends to be lifted up a little bit, you know. Being in a mix of it, it can be, sometimes you can't see that light at the end of the tunnel, you know. And us as peers, because we've been through that experience or something similar to that experience, we can see the light, you know. Yeah, just reassuring them that it gets better, it gets greater later, you know.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had it where when somebody is going through something that you seem like you think it might be traumatic, but they're fine? Like, I think that was the really interesting experience that I had when I was visiting a client in the hospital. And for me, I think I was in a situation, I've been in situations where the hospital is kind of like where you go when you're not doing well, rather than a place that you go to get well. So when I visited them, I thought they were going to have a hard time, but he was talking like, yeah, I'm great here. I like it here. I'm getting better. And that's a good opportunity. That was a good opportunity for me to commend them on their strength, because I know for me, I've been to a couple of hospitalizations, but I still find that I have to like find some time to get used to it again. But as soon as they got there, they were okay. So I was like, wow, you know.
Yeah, I think that goes into like broadening your perspective as not just a peer, but like as a person. Because sometimes you see people go through things and you're like, bro, how? I don't know that I could deal with that. But then it lends to like this idea of how resilient we are as people. And, you know, like just because we might not be able to deal with it, other people can. And then we just support in other ways. So I think that was dope that you got to kind of like experience that. I've also like sent myself to the hospital to get well, but this was when I was younger, and I was like, if I don't do this, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. So I need to be somewhere that I can feel safe and I feel will help me. And the experience is definitely different, I think, as a young person versus like somebody a little bit older when you're not in your teens. But yeah, perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of admire the individuals that's going through those type of events that, like, from the outside looking in, it looks painful, but they just rocking through it. Just, yeah, okay. You know, like it for me, it could be a double-edged sword, because I'm like, I look at it at the perspective of they just don't care no more. But then I look at it like, maybe they just been through a lot of shit and they're tired, you know? And it's a miracle to see that, you know, wow, I'm not the only person that's been through this. You know, rather you're the one that's receiving that word or you're the one that's giving that word. You know, talking about the ground of connection, you know, that foundation of connection, you know, and even if you haven't been through exactly what they've been through, you know, providing that support or giving them that idea of what you think may work, and also hearing their idea and joining them together to navigate that experience. to get to that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
What do you guys do to decompress from traumatic, like vicarious trauma? What do you guys do for yourselves?
Say it again.
What, like, when you're experiencing this vicarious trauma, like, how do you decompress or find ground, like get yourself grounded again?
Mari, you want to answer that?
And I apologize for any noise that might be happening in the background. It's like a loud traffic day, but I think it depends on the situation. So like there are some things that, like I said earlier, I feel more healed from. And then there are some things that are still like a really soft spot for me. So like when it comes to experiencing vicarious trauma through things that are more so like related to anything with childhood. So if it's abuse, neglect, suicidal ideations, things like that, then I just hold it down while I'm in the exchange. And then afterwards, I have to just like give myself some time to process that and process like, what is it that I'm feeling right now? And what is it that I need? So if I'm feeling just kind of triggered from hearing someone else's story about like the things that they've endured, then I have to do the work to like separate their story from my story and respect that, they're dealing with it the best that they can, and I'm supporting them the best that they can. And either I'll go journal or I'll like talk to my sister or my boyfriend about it. And it really depends on who I decide to talk to, because I'm the kind of person who honestly, like, I just want to push through my emotions, and that's not always the best thing for me, especially when I am experiencing some kind of vicarious trauma or feeling like triggered about things. I get very, very triggered about like sexual assault and like people's stories of things along those lines, because those are things that I can also relate to. And when it comes to something heavy like that, then I know that I absolutely have to talk about it. And like I said, if I have to journal first to kind of like find the words and find the feelings that are associated with that, and then just again, like separate it, and then do something nice for myself, whether that's like go play a video game, go listen to music. Sometimes I like go online, and even if I don't end up shopping, I'll do just like window shopping and look at like pretty pink stuff or sparkly stuff, and like just put my mind in a more positive place. So that's how I deal with things like that. What about you guys?
All right, Drew, jump in.
All right. Basically, yeah, doing the things that I enjoy, always enjoyed. For when I was really going through, when I was first diagnosed, I stopped listening to music because my thing is hearing sounds, right? Hearing voices and things like that. So I found that when I stopped listening to music, I got more depressed. And when I started again, it was like a part of me that I'd lost came back. And I decided that I'm going to try to do more things that would do more things that I enjoy. Because when you're diagnosed, it's like the things that you can't see are bothering you, or you can't physically touch are bothering you. So you need to it's your job to find things that can bring you happiness, but in a different way, not because you paid for it or anything, but like things that just make you feel good. Yeah.
Understand. And it's kind of like, well, what do? I do a variety of different things. I love doing speaking engagements. So when I get into an event like that, where that trauma tends to kick in, music definitely. I'm big on philosophy, so I'm always listening to different philosophy, and I'm always trying to sharpen my tools of learning more about the mental health field, the good, bad, the ugly, the indifference. To be able to take on that feeling in a better manner. Yeah, but also what's helpful with that is going to therapy. I think a lot of people confuse therapy with a therapeutic event. Going to therapy is actually talking with somebody and sorting out that invisible suitcase compared to therapeutic event, whereas I'm stressed out, I'm going to listen to music, or I'm stressed out, I'm going to eat, or I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go to the bar, whatever the case may be, but therapy is a key thing that helps me wind down and withdraw from that event or whatnot. Correct me if I'm wrong if I described it off, but I believe that's the difference between a therapeutic event and therapy.
No, that's right. It's like having your coping skills and like you reverting to those things versus like the act of speaking to someone, because those are two very different like outlets. Like now kind of placing your traumas and your experiences and onto somebody else and like experiencing kind of like that transfer of energy versus like it's just me and my music, it's just me and my anime, it's just me and my coloring book. So yeah, just wanted to say you were right about that.
Yeah, and some people may think that stuff is a waste of time. Taking the time out for yourself is not a waste of time. Yeah,
I agree, but I guess the reality of that is that individual's perspective of it.
Right.
It's not wrong. Like, it's a difference between self-care and symptom management. It's like there's a thin line, there's a silver line in there. You got self-care over here, and you got symptom management over here, on trying to balance these things out,
I think so. Sorry. I just wanted to say, I think it kind of goes hand in hand, because like when we are as peers, I know in my experience of like talking to people who don't want to be on medication, it's like, so then how do we find other ways to make sure that you're good? And a lot of people do like revert to their coping skills or their social skills. So I think that they do kind of go hand in hand. Like, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then your symptoms can like kind of like multiply and get worse, and then you're back at this place that you don't want to be. So I think that while there's a difference, they also do go hand in hand. And I just wanted to like throw that out there for anyone who's listening who might think that there's like a very sharp, bless you, a sharp distinction between symptom management and self-care, because I think that self-care does kind of play into managing your symptoms, especially again if you are somebody who doesn't want to take medication or doesn't want to do therapy. Then you kind of have to think like, so then what else in the world can I do to keep myself as my best self?
Right.
Well, given that, because I'm not sure, and I'm just talking because I talk with other people, ear hustling, whatever the case may be, right? Help me understand, or for the people that may not even know, what's the difference between the self-management and the symptom management then? Like, if you could give a bold definition of symptom management and a bold definition of self-care.
Well, I think with self-care are like tangible things that you can do to take care of yourself, whether that is knowing like self-care for you is like taking a shower and grounding yourself, or giving yourself like a spa day. And so like there's like tangible things that you can feel, you can actually like experience. And then symptom management, I think, is more so like knowing what your symptoms are and keeping them in check and realizing like, okay, today I'm dissociating, or today I'm like isolating myself. And now like recognizing what those symptoms are, like ascribing something to it that is going to keep that thing in place. So if I'm isolating myself, how do I manage this feeling? Like, do I reach out to somebody? Do I call my therapist? Do I like just go hang out in the living room with my family? So that's why I said I think the two are not like a sharp distinction between the two. I think they do go hand in hand. And it does take a lot of like self-awareness to be able to self-manage and know like what it is that you're feeling. And then also after knowing what you're feeling, how do I battle this? How do I keep myself from going into a crisis or having some kind of like emergent situation?